team. Sheila, Juanita, promo crew. Wall, Helene, Ashley, Elijah. Good afternoon, my villagers. What's the news? Do I need to ask? Let me just first thank my team, Sheila, Juanita, of course, engineer King Norm, and my promo crew, Halim rather, Chastity, Chloe, and Elijah. I'm just kind of, these days and months since the beginning of 2025 have put us all in sort of a frame of reference that I don't know if any of us can basically understand, but it's there. What I want you to do, I said to you, I said, I'm going to follow the ancestor advice or question when he asked Brother Joe Madison, when he said, what you going to do about it? We're going through some stuff that we're just kind of at a quandary. We really don't know what to do. But I just want to put us in an imaginary state for a moment. Sometimes you need that. So let's just imagine for a moment that we awaken in a village, the village of Peking. That's a village in Senegal, West Africa. Probably had another name many centuries ago, but right now it's Peking Village. I was there some years back when I was in Senegal and impressed with what I saw in the village. So reminiscent of where I grew up in this little small hick town of Lake Butler, Florida, back in the day. But just imagine you are hanging out with your fellow villagers, talking smack, before the slave catchers, the human traffickers, interrupted things. We were creating what the world knows today, the pyramids, surgery, language, the hieroglyphics, math, music, cautionary tales. Those are the kind of images you want you to wake up with every morning until this satanic entity leaves its nest, the White House. Which still begs the question, what we're going to do about it. Our true history is a manifestation of who we really are. I've been following Facebook lately, and you'll be surprised at the hateful, condescending, unhealthy ways we perceive ourselves. And we understand that because it's from the brain dirtying. But I declare, if you continue to believe what you see of us now is the sum total of who we really are, then you can't believe your history. It's either one or the other. We as African American people we've traveled through so many terrains, since those glorious days of our beginnings, and none more pronounced than the last decade. So the essence of my podcast today, the program, talking about the decade bringing us into the 2025, is to frame our existence from our enslavement to present by standards unique to any since slavery. Now, aside from personal devastations that this decade, my husband made his transition. My baby boy made his transition. My youngest son, I should say. My daughter-in-law made hers. Two of my brothers, my sister, and other loved ones. This decade has been one for the history books. The other devastations brought forth by natural and unnatural events makes you think seriously about an end of time scenario. The climate situation, the election of a black president, the obvious occurrences of nature, the attempted overthrow of the government, the 2020 coronavirus, the compromise of the Supreme Court, the pushback of civil liberty gains over the past century, abortion rights, voting rights, etc. Stolen elections, or that stolen election, the last one, the onset of a dictatorship. Ask the question again, where do we go from here? First, we go to God with his or her assistance. We move back into our creative juices without fear and trepidation. That's why I admonish you to introduce and reintroduce yourselves to your history. And there will be no doubt of what we can do or cannot do. I sat in my living room yesterday, Sunday, and zoomed into my church services and food for the soul, as usual. And then my TV went into another mode. I found myself listening to the Legion of Africa, African mythology stories. Now, it is said that mythology is not real in the sense of being factual, but it's also not simply false. It represents stories that explain a cultural worldview, values, and beliefs. They are primarily symbolic narratives that convey deeper truth about the human experiences and the world. We generally read history literature starting at BC, but there was history, African history, that predates that period by millions of years, I understand. And of course, I'm not a brain expert, but I do believe our brains are made to absorb information beyond what they're being used to doing, at least since we got over here into this part of the world. So to test it, let's start deliberately, intentionally, and forthrightly seeking out information. Specifically on us, prior to our enslavement, we knew what we knew who we were, and there was no doubt about who we were. But after the enslavement, after the what we call human trafficking, because that's all it was, really, all it was. And once we understand or re-understand, we did know who we were, but we've been through so much, and it's understandable that we would not necessarily know who we are in these times. But to the extent that we're going to get back to who we were, we're just going to have to believe that we are what our history books tell us we are. To that extent, that's one of the things we're going to bring you today, because we have established a homeschool for our young folks. We believe that's where it's all going to come from. That our young folks going to carry on, as we have carried on from our ancestors. That's what it's all about. And so they will know without a doubt who they are and whose they are. And one of the ways we here at this podcast is doing that is encouraging our people, and particularly our youth, to seek their history, as if you are grabbing onto a lifeline to save your life. My co-host today is one of those youth, my nephew, Alwa, 7th grader from Cedarbrook School. He's here today with me because he will be introducing his classmate back at the school, who will be coming on sharing information with us. But before that happens, I want to read their instructor bio. She is heavy indeed, and she's the type of person we need for our young people to get them make sure they are where they need to be. Her name is Rose Moore, a native of New Jersey. She's a black history researcher. Miss Moore studies black history from antiquity to modern-day Western civilization. She has investigated the black roots in the Bible, discovering people of color being the only people of the Old Testament scriptures, the progenitors of mankind, and the original people of all civilizations. She wrote her first publication on black presence in the Bible 2004, tracing the root of mankind to Africa and the first woman mitochondria DNA. The Discovery Channel had presented the evidence in the documentary film titled The Real Eve. Today, she continues her research in the spiritual and psychological dynamics of the black man's plight through history. Since then, Ms. Moore has engaged in independent studies on the subject. She's a graduate of Rutgers, 1980, Eastern Theological Seminary, 2004. She served as a licensed ordained chaplain in the urban community of Essex County, 2004 through 2006. United Chaplain Worldwide Outreach, New Jersey chapter. She said she was ordained a deaconess under Pastor Warren Stevens, later assigned to head Christian education with the last position held as trustee, serving the parishioners of Yaga, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Worship Center, Newark, New Jersey. Ms. Moore currently studies university laws as they apply to spiritual psychology construct of the character of man. She writes papers and articles on the subject. She has taught on the subject since 2010. She facilitates mental wellness and biblical study groups. She is an inventor, a first prize award winner of the AWISNJ American Women in Science in 2020. Ms. Moore has recently returned to college, pursuing a master's degree in psychology with a focus on people of color and Caribbean studies. Her ambition is to help promote health and wellness to her people from the psychological destructive patterns imposed by systemic racism. So you see, it seems that we have a winner here, right? Today, though, we are going on a journey back in time, way back, to explore the amazing world of kings and queens of ancient Africa. These leaders weren't just powerful. They were builders, as I said, warriors, protectors, and thinkers. From the Golden Temple of Egypt to the mighty kingdoms of Mali and Nubia, Africa has a rich history full of brave kings and wise queens who helped shape the world we live in today. Now you get ready to meet some of the most legendary rulers who left behind stories, monuments, and legacies that are still remembered thousands of years later. And when I did introduce already, but reintroduce my host right now, Alwa. He's going to give us a hint of what's going to come from Miss Moore and the group. And you can take it from here, Amwa.
Barigani. I am Alwa Moss, your host for Williams ACAP. Williams Cubeline Academy of Plainfield. Another great day at the village. The history of our people is so exciting. Our first presentation to you was a history of our ancestral connection, Cameroon and Nigeria. Our second presentation to you was the great inventions of Africa. And today, we are going to bring you some of our great kings and queens that were part of the great African heritage. Remember, some time ago, my Aunt Ruby explained that we we were stolen and brought over here. We were not slaves. Many of our ancestors were royalty, kings, and queens. Well, today we are going to give you a history of some of our great ancestors who were great kings and queens. Miss Moore is our instructor at Williams ACAP, and I am going to bring you her on. Miss Moore?
All right, great, excellent.
Go ahead, go ahead. Yes, I'm very happy this afternoon to introduce May's Kids. And we're going to talk about today the kings and queens from which we have descended. And first up will be Monty.
Pharaoh Ramsey, also known as Ramses, the Great ruled Egypt from 1279 to 1213 BCE. During the 19th dynasty, he is one of the most celebrated and powerful pharaohs in Egyptian history. His reign was marked by extensive building projects, including the iconic temples at Abdul Simba, as well as military campaigns that expanded Egypt's influence.
Right. Ramsey II.
Ramsey II signed the first known peace treaty in history with the Hittites and is often associated with the biblical falco of the
Book of Exodus.
Exodus.
The Book of Exodus.
The Book of Exodus.
Thank you very much for that insight on who we are. Thank you so much. So next up, we have a beautiful Helene. Beautifully spoken.
Kampai, also known as P and Kai, has a Kushite ruler from Nubia, modern-day Sudan, who reigned around 744 to 714 BCE. He is notable for his conquest of Egypt, which led him to the establishment of the 25th dynasty and the reunification of Egypt and Nubia under Nubian rule. Paye was a devout follower of the god Amun. And
God Amen.
Mm-hmm. And sought to restore traditional Egyptian religious practices. His reign is documented through the famous Victory Stele, which records his military accesses and religious devotion.
So you see, thank you very much. So you see, we descended from very, very powerful people. And that blood runs through us even today. Next, we're going to hear from the head of everyone, which is Elijah. He's the oldest.
Sundiata Keita was the founder of the Mali Empire in the 13th century and is a legendary figure in West African history. Known as the Lion King, Sundiata overcame physical disabilities and political adversity to unite the Mandinka people and establish a powerful and prosperous empire. His leadership laid the foundation for the wealth and influence of Mali, which would reach its peak under rulers like Mansa Musa. The Epic of Sandiata remains one of the Africans' most important oral traditions.
Thank you so much. That was so beautifully done. And I know you've all heard of the Mandinka. That was the tribe that was taken from Africa that we saw in the movie Roots. That was the Mandinka people. And I believe, what was his name? Kunta Kente. Thank you very much, baby. Kunta Kente. As we remember him, he played the star of the Roots episode of the Mandinka people. And he never, never, ever, ever was able to reconcile himself to slavery and who he was and his roots. And neither should we. Next up, we have Chloe Chastity.
Queen Hatshepsut ruled Egypt from approximately 1479 to 1458 BCE and is considered one of the most effective and longest reigning female pharaohs. She initially served as regent for her stepson Thutmose III, but eventually assumed pharaonic powers. Hatshepsut focused on economic prosperity and monumental architecture, commissioning the magnificent temple at the Delhi Bari.
Very good.
Her reign was marked by peace, trade expeditions, notably to the land of Punt,
and artistic
innovation despite later attempts to erase her legacy. Modern archaeologically has restored her place as a powerful ruler of Egypt.
Thank you so much. And next up is Chloe. Nana. Sorry.
Queen Almaranas was a warrior queen of Kishite kingdom of Maro, who ruled around 40 BCE to 100 BCE. She is best known for leading her people in a
Successful
empire,
successful military campaign
against the Roman Empire. After the death of her husband, King Terriquaz, despite facing the powerful adversary.
Next, thank you very much, Nana. Next is Chloe.
Kunta Kinte was the great royal. Queen Nefertiti was the great royal wife of Pharaoh Akhenaten. During the 14th rule in the religious revolution that shifted Egyptian worship toward monotheism, centered on the sun disk. Nefertiti is often depicted as an equal partner to Akhenaten, participating in rituals and possibly ruling her own right after his death. Her striking bust, discovered in Amarnia, is one of the most iconic images of ancient Egypt in symbolizing her enduring legacy of beauty and power.
Thank you so much. And there you have it. And in our closing, we're going to close this out today by saying that learning about the kings and queens of ancient Africa is important for Black youth in America and around the world because it helps them to see the strength, intelligence, leadership that is part of our heritage and part of their heritage, Too often, history lessons focus only on slavery or the struggle, but before that, they were powerful African empires, brilliant rulers, rich cultures that shaped the world. Knowing this history brings us pride, confidence, and a deeper understanding of identity of who we are. It shows that Black history did not begin with pain, but began in greatness and exists till today. So we want to awaken that great DNA that we have flowing through our veins, because that's where we descended from, the great kings and queens of Africa. And thank you for listening to our segment. And this will be our last segment. And we're going to take a summer break, and then we'll be back in September to feed you more. I hope you've enjoyed
Oh,
and learned.
definitely we have, and I'm going to make the apology right now for my youngsters. I just threw it kind of on them, but it show you the grit of them. They decided that they were going to do in spite of, and so it's all my fault because I didn't give them their information in time, and I find myself as expert as I'm supposed to be, dealing with what I'm doing here, trying to figure out the next move. So you all did excellent, well, given that I didn't do my part in time. But that's all in learning. The important thing, the most important thing, it's not how you project it, but how you know it. You all know who you are. You talk about our lineage and where we came from. We, as of my co-host here today, Alwa said we were not slaves when we were brought over here. No, we were kings and queens and royalty and doctors and lawyers and other folk. We had it all together. Otherwise, they would never have brought us over here because they were looking for someone to build what you see here as we call America. Didn't come by happenstance. Come by the sweat and tears that we put into this society here. So we're going to be continuing this, and we know that it's going to come through our youngsters to carry the ball, as we have been able to do from our ancestors, So each one teach one, and that's what we are destined to do, so we can make our people understand from whence they come. Because that is extremely important. As I said before, I sometimes follow Facebook a little now. And it's so sad because of the condition we find ourselves in as African people. We don't know, well, we're not psychologists and we're not, so we would not know. We think we should know. But I always give the analogy of other catastrophes that have gone on, like this recent the 2020 virus that came through. When that virus came through, I think we all was taken aback because we didn't know where to go, how to go, hadn't seen anything like that before in our lifetime, anybody's lifetime. You had to be 120 or more to have witnessed another virus such as. So we were just taken aback, but we knew immediately that it was going to take someone other than who we had normally looked for a resolution. We didn't go run into the rich football player. We didn't go run into the PhD person. We knew it was going to take special people, specific for that case. That's why I'm trying to make us understand. Our situation is so uniquely different from anything anyone else has gone through. There's been slavery before. There was the Holocaust with our Jewish friends. There was other Japanese went through what they went through. But none you cannot see anywhere in written history or otherwise where they were stripped of everything. Stripped of their heritage, stripped of their language, stripped of their education, stripped of their religion, just stripped. And when that happened, that had to have an impact somehow. And that's when you hear me say I'm an amateur looking for experts in Africanism, that's what I mean. I may be an expert in something, but not that. And for us to get through what we went through, the same as that virus, you're going to have specialized people special people who have studied that in depth as to how to bring us through what we went through and what's still going through, as a matter of fact. It still impacts us even as today. So we have not been able to, again, I don't blame any of us for not, but we don't look beyond our circumstances and really see what behind everything. The circumstances show us that we're the least in everything. We're the least in health, wealth, education. Well, if that is the case, something, if we believe our history, let me put it that way. Well, some of us don't know the history. But if you learn the history and you learn where we came from, we were great, the greatest of mathematics. We were surgeons. We built the pyramids, on and on and on. So if you can believe that, you have to wonder, well, then what happened to them 400 plus years since? See, I coined the phrase African slave virus 401, meaning that we can equate what we went through pretty much like that virus that came through. It just hit us. We were brought over here, hoisted it up on those slave blocks to be sold to the highest bidder. We were sold and then were treated unhumanly like none other. As I said before, there had been slavery, but not to the extent that we have experienced. We got to understand that. Once we understand that, then we can look at each other in a different way. One of the reasons that propelled me to write my first book, Verbal Healing, we must reject tired, trite, tasteless, and other nonsensical expressions that keep us damaged. Because we've heard the expression that sticks and stones, they hit my bone, but words would never hurt me, or something to that effect. Well, that's not correct. Words sometimes affect you more seriously than the sticks and stones. You may be able to cure that, but sometimes you can't cure the words that come your way. Because even today, we are still hearing us saying, we are our worst enemy. Now, I know you hear that all the time, right? We black people don't stick together. Black folks are like crabs in the barrel. You know, stop making excuses. You must get past the race thing. How are you going to get past the race thing if you haven't been attended? That's like when I did contact the virus a couple of times. I say I had the virus. Now, how would that look for any one of my relatives or people who saw me laying there in the bed? So, you got to get past that. The first thing they would have, I would imagine, would have advised me to go to where they thought I could get some assistance. Well, that's what we need. We need assistance for what ails us. It doesn't come from me. I'll stand on the soapbox in a minute and defend my people to high heaven, and particularly my men, because I know what they have gone through and what we've gone through, but they more than any. I can defend them. But that's the amateur me. But the expert will define. See, that's the difference. Then we got that third voice that's always out there. You know, the antagonist. That one will lie. Always like that governor of Florida came out with the lie that we were brought over here and we learned skills after we were brought over here. You know, one of the reasons that was input for me to start this home school, because when he said that, I said, now, you know, that just doesn't even sound right from the mouth. So that's when we began our home school. And I suggest other black, our African brothers and sisters, if you don't know your history, and it's easily accessible now because you can turn to YouTube and all that other stuff, and they've got a lot of history. Because that's what I try to bring to you each Monday anyway. And I hope Norm has that piece that I sent the other day. If you don't worry about it. But I always try to send, yes, if you would bring that on now, I would be so grateful. Because what we got to do is always get information.
I don't want to, when they attack black people after they've been murdered, when they did absolutely nothing wrong, you're pushing us to the limit. And what do I mean by that? You're asking us to talk about history, the history of the South. This is in Georgia. What happened in Georgia? There were savages in Georgia. It was the ancestors of the white right-wingers. They were absolute savages. They murdered people, they lynched people, they raped people,
What
they
happened during
enslaved
those
people.
lynches?
They took babies from their mothers and sold them as property. You want to talk about savages? Your ancestors were the biggest savages the world has ever seen.
And
So don't you dare call a black man a savage after you murdered him. Don't you dare do that. I'm so sick of African Americans being called violent when the world's worst violence was done to them, not by them, to them, not by them. For God's sake, you want to do racist stereotypes? If it fit anywhere, and it doesn't, but if it fit anywhere, it would certainly fit white right-wingers in the South, who has hundreds of years of history of being savages. Savages. They snatched babies. And they sold them as property and they raped their mothers. Savages. That's what they were. You want to talk about stereotypes? Screw all of you who still defend that Confederacy, that monstrosity. Anyone who defends that is a barbaric savage.
That's why they don't want to teach American history in public schools. That's why there's been a strong orchestrated effort to prevent the teaching of anything that you just mentioned right now. Because, hey, God forbid that, children learn about the real savages in this country's history.
I don't want to, when they.
See, that's the kind of information we need to hear. There's a quote, and I can't give credit now because I don't know who said it, but it's true, that truth, honest truth, will be the only thing that liberate us. You can't just go around because you don't want to hurt feelings and all that other kind of stuff. You have to tell it like it is. It helps because, not for the sake of other folk, but for our sake, it helps us to hear it bold and unabridged. Just something that we can hold on to know why we're in the position we are in. Because I hear even us say that we are criminals. As I said, I don't follow Facebook that much, but I do sometimes just to get information. This whole week there were those talking about how we got to, if we don't want to be criminalized, we got to stop doing criminal things, blah, blah, blah. What he just said to you, and I know that the majority of criminals in this country are done by white and non-black. So we need to know that. We need to stop giving in to falsehood and stop. The ones of us who know it got to speak it loudly. Otherwise, it will continue. I do believe truth crushed to the earth will rise again, but I still believe you have to be bold enough to speak it. And that young man was bold enough to speak it. He's not the only one. I've been hearing a whole lot. And one of the things I will bring you, so you won't just limit it to or think it was just us black folks who's saying that. There are white folks admitting that now because they see what they see. And what they see is the truth of how we got to the position we're in. Because, see, many of us may not know we built the pyramids, may not know we were the first surgeon, may not know we we created the languages, may not know a lot of things that we know. And when you hear sometimes it's, oh, you're just a bragging, you're just not the truth. The truth is we are the original people. And we did we created much. We created even after we got over here and was abused and enslaved and all that kind of stuff. Much of the creations that you hear about in this country was done by the so-called enslaved people, those that were, the genocide people. So we got to know that. And once we know that, we will love ourselves. We'll like when we meet each other. We won't have this condemnation. We won't have the idea that we're crabs in a barrel, when we'll realize we're all in a barrel. We're all in a barrel trying to claw our way out. And if I claw you harder than you think I should, and that's not trying to keep you in the barrel, it may be just trying to get me out of the barrel. You know what I'm saying? So we got to begin to understand when we make conversations, when we talk about ourselves. That's what we're doing. We've been missed. My good friend, I used to say brainwashed, but he said brain dirtied. Makes sense. Dirtied the brain. So we got to clean the brain, and we can't do it alone. We can't do it just by osmosis. We have to have people who study. The same as you would, a cardiologist would study your heart, or just as soon as an ontologist would study cancer. You got to study what we went through. And what we went through is no comparison to any other catastrophe. I can't even talk anymore. Catastrophe that man has ever seen, you know? And we hear the word that we are miracle, not miracle worker, we are walking miracles. It's so true. Because I doubt there have been any other folk that could have gone through what we've gone there and still survive and thrive. Not just survive, we thrive. And much of what is happening around our humanity today come from, if it's good, come from us. We need to know that. We need to appreciate that. We need to pass that on for the ones of us who know, each one teach one. And for those of us who don't know, we pray that you open yourselves up to believing, understanding that what you see in the diaspora of our homeland is not what we really were. We are something greater, something different, something that the world admire, whether you know it or not. You know, don't believe the hype when you're pointed at and called criminals and murderers and, you know, this, that, or the other. We are the envy of the world. From our tip of our head to the bottom of our feet, people want to be what some of you don't want to be, you know. Not just to single her out, but even when you talk about physical beauty, we know that physical beauty has been established by a system that controlled you. I hear, I love her, Sherry. I watch her show, but all she talks about is hair in a demeaning way. And it bothers me to the extent that a lot of young people, young girls particularly, listen to that condemnation and they believe what they hear, and particularly if it comes from a person like Sherry. Same way with the N-word. The N-word is spoken by our young people and some of our old people, but particularly the rappers and stuff like that. That reminds me, to remind you, I'm writing a book, my first children book, coming out soon, probably in August or so, maybe September. But anyway, it's the title of the book is What's in a Word? Must you tell everything? Now, the must you tell everything come from one of my little nephews when he was very small. He and his sister came up to be with their godmother, who was my sister Rose. She took him out to lunch, and she asked my little nephew how was he doing in school. And he, okay, he said, oh, doing good, I'm really doing good. And the little sister that heard him said, no, you're not. The teacher said you were being bad. He said, must you tell everything? So the word stuck with her, not this one, but from my book. That's what I'm writing about, how words do stick with you. She heard it so much because she was a tattler, told everything. So when she heard it so much, he would ask the question, must you tell everything? And she got to the place, he thought her name was Must. So when the mom took her to school for the first time, kindergarten, she dropped her off in the office, and the office took her to her classroom. So when the mom got off from work, she went to the school to pick up the child. She went to the classroom, and she wanted to know if her child, her name was Chastity. The child's name was Chastity. She wanted to know where was Chastity. And the teacher said, I don't have a Chastity here. Well, you can imagine how, oh my word, the mother was totally flabbergasted. frantic. She said, I know I dropped my child off here. I left her in the office, but they brought her to this classroom. Teacher said, well, I don't have a kid here named Chastity. At the same time, Chastity appeared from she had gotten her coat from the closet, so she came out, and the mom said, there's my child. There's Chastity. And the teacher said, oh, she said her name was Must. And the mom knew right away where it all came from. She had picked up the other kids from the other classroom. So when they got into the car, she said to Elijah, the one who called her, must you tell everything? Elijah, you see what I mean? Well, it all came from a name, the N-word, because when before this happened, Elijah used the N-word on one of them, and she said, that's what she said, I'm going to tell Mom you're using that bad word. He said, well, no, that's just a word of endearment. And he said, you know it's not a word of endearment. I'm going to tell Mom. He said, must you tell everything? So he often said, must you tell everything? So that's when the mom and those got back in the car. She said, see what words do to you, or what a word can do to you. So when we hear our young people using that word so freely today, it tortures my soul, because I know as a from the silent generation, you know, I know firsthand what those words mean and what they did. You know, if you read your history, you'll know that prior to any lynching or any burning or any whatever, they call you the N-word. So why would you want to continue using that word if you think it's a word of endearment? And if you hadn't thought further, just think about what other group use words. I don't really even know negative words associated with other groups. I really don't, because you don't hear them. And if you don't hear them, you won't know them. And they don't say them because it's painful to continue to remember the words that got to your very soul. So this is why we are so intentional in teaching our young people their history. We don't want them to misunderstand what they see. What they see is really what what they see is is what we have suffered through our ancestors, and to the extent that we're still suffering through atrocities unlike anything that anyone else has seen in their lifetime or have read about throughout history. Once we can make them understand it, you can imagine then how they can pass it on to generations to come. And that's why we work so hard, so seriously, to have them understand who they are, learn who they are, appreciate who they are, you know. And the only way you're going to do that is for us to learn our history. We often talk about things that about our community that are not necessarily the accurate identification of who we are. And I said that before. Even I heard recently, and I don't know the person's name, but I know he was on TMZ, whatever that channel is, the other day talking about creating a city, a community just for white folk. So believe me, we're going back to segregation now, which might not be a bad idea. Doesn't bother me in that regard. What bothers me is unfair treatment by folks who hold control, the power to do things against you. But to the extent that they want to live by themselves, it's okay. But we know that goes beyond that. When they do that, then they start being in control. They control all the particular, the police department, the army, the whatever else that can come into your neighborhood while you're by yourself. I don't think we've ever cared about integrating. As a matter of fact, that was never that was never the concern. You know, when you don't control your narrative, other folks will take your narrative and turn it around. Because I remember well when Dr. Martin Luther King and those came out, it was desegregation. Listen to me now. It was desegregation, not integration. They were concerned with being forced, you know, to do things against their will. Not that they was talking about integrating with anyone. They say desegregate. Let me desegregate with honor, dignity. Don't control me. That way I can go wherever I want. But when they saw that that was not going to get the reaction they wanted from their other folks, them white folks, they used the word integration. That would bring on a different kind of meaning and feeling. So when they threw in the word integration, that derailed all kinds of crazy stuff amongst people. But it was never about that for us in the first place. We say desegregation. The same as other words. When we use one word and they turn it around and use another one, then it weakens what we intend to do in the first place. That's one of the reasons I'm so concerned about this reparation. Every other group that's been had in one way or the other got their reparation without question. We got to go through 30, 40 years of trying to figure out what part of reparation and who gets it and all that kind of crazy stuff. But I had someone on my show, I can't think of the name right now, some months ago, last year, talking about reparation. And I understand that there's somewhere somebody wants to redefine, as they did with affirmative action. I think it went into DEI. And even with that, they attack it. They know how to attack anything that's benefiting you. So reparation, I don't agree at all that that word should be changed. Because once you change that word, you're going to create a word that's going to be satisfactory to anyone who may have grievance. Because white women really do have grievance, so, you know, of a kind. They were not free as their men were at some point. So they can all that, as with affirmative action, they stuck themselves in there and they got more affirmative action, benefit of affirmative action than we did. But it because of the clarification of the classification of what the word meant. So if we change the word reparation to whatever, I forgot the term they want to use, but it will fit right in with what someone else who may have been a little something taken away from them. We should keep the word reparation and be very determined about that, and know that's what we deserve, and we don't compromise just to satisfy other folks. We got a lot on our plate, and as our brother said, what we're going to do about it. That's always the question now. What we're going to do about it. Because there are things that we have to think strategically, deliberately about how we can move forward. And as I get back to the village concept, we've done it before. We just got to regain our sense of who we are. And it won't just come from, you know, us waking up one morning and knowing all this. I still believe we got to be as serious about it as cardiology is about heart attack. They go and study. They go and make sure that they come together on consensus. There's another thing that we need to consider too. We like to say we're not monolithic. Big word and it sounds good. But what it does is say we know we're the only group of people, really, if you look at every other group, that have not come together with a consensus. It's not monolithic. If we just come together with a consensus, see, every other group, they have places that they go yearly or annual or whatever to decide how to come back with one accord. You got the Birch Society with the Jewish people. You got the B'nai B'rith. You got other groups got different organizations. We really don't. Now, the closest thing to what I'm defining is the Nation of Islam. They do have, they're together. They go away really. They decide what they want to do, how they want to do it, when they want to do it. We, as African people in general, don't have that. Now, we may have the ACP and the Urban League, but that was not our organization that we go away decide strategies for ourselves. Those are organizations that combination of other people within the organization. I'm talking about something that we can talk about as serious as at the B'nai B'rith, as the Birch Society, as all those other groups that get together to come back with a consensus. It has nothing to do with being monolithic. It's just that we need to know what it is, a few things that we need to get together on, unequivocal and without doubt that this is what we need. But I tell you one thing, I am so pleased to have brought the youngsters on today. They will be on vacation. They will take the summer off, and we'll be back as soon as. But in the meantime, let me see my folks here. And Chester, okay, look at there. George Jackson from watching. Robert Cabbage-Stock on deck. Robert Cabbage-Stock, Shalando Smith, Rashida Johnson, Janice Heiser, and Lloyd on deck. Good. Sharonda Will Smith and Chester from Florida, Sheila Bird. Oh, my goodness, I'm so glad to see you all. And Chester, so true. Yes, we need to hear the truth. The truth will set us free, not the negativity and untruth saying. Good, and that's for sure. And I'm going to be telling the truth as best I can from here forward. I thank all you all for watching. I must say again, if you like what we're doing, if you think it should be continued, we just want you to drop us a note and share and just keep us in your prayers, really. If you want to send donation, you can do that, Ruby Shivers. You can do that with Zelle or Facebook. Not Facebook. What is that other thing? Well, anyway, old-fashioned way, you can send a check. Okay, but to the extent that I appreciate you all, my villagers, we'll see you next week. God bless.